Hey folks, good evening. Welcome once again to another money space with me, Kalu Aja. On this space, we're talking money, the economy, and of course, finance. We want to get those topics important and in front of you so that way you can become a better investor and of course, a better citizen. And this week, guys, we're talking crude oil, NNPC, and energy in Nigeria, right? NNPC just released their results, their 2024 result. If you haven't seen it, it looks like a banger. About 4 trillion naira in net profit. Note net profit, which means they paid all their expenses and we made trillions, which is going to be like, most of you might be surprised. NNPC for a long time very opaque, wasn't giving us returns or results. Now we're getting monthly reports on output from NNPC. We're getting monthly reports on oil sales, and we're now getting their annual reports, even though it's 2024, which is better. You know, it's better than what we had in the past. And we're of course pleased with the result that we've seen. So we decided to just talk around it, use that report to just talk really around what NNPC is doing and the oil sector in Nigeria. Also to do with the pipelines, the AKK pipelines, Dangote refinery, all that kind of stuff. I have a guest that's supposed to be here with us. I'm just going to wait for him to hop in, and then once he does, we can start off the session today and have his expertise basically guide us. This is a very, very technical topic, so we just want to have someone that is really going to be there with us. So let me just make sure I have him here, and then we can get going. Yep. Okay. How you guys doing? I hope you guys are get ready for the new year. We've had our financial education space right for two weeks now. We've done the income, we've done the expenses. Last week we did the assets and liabilities. And the next time we're going to meet, we're going to do the asset allocation. So hang in there, guys. It's going to be a last session. We'll do the asset allocations. And then, of course, we'll round up that financial health check. My guest is here. He's just going to log in real quick to be a speaker. And then we can have the space up and running. So thanks, folks, for hanging out here with us and all that. I do appreciate you guys doing that every weekend, 7 p.m. West African time with me. All right, just waiting for Kelvin to accept the mic, and then we'll get started. There you go. So yeah, just gonna hit the accept. Let me send that again to you. And of course, we're just gonna have like a more like a 15 or 20-minute chat with Kelvin. If you wanna ask a question, you know the drill. Request to speak. Send me a DM. Since he's speaking, I'll be able to read the DMs more this time. Usually when I'm speaking, it's harder to read the DMs and then keep on talking. But I think our guest is here with us. Hi, Kelvin. Welcome to the space with me, Kelvin. I can hear you, yeah, loud and clear. If you're doing, how you doing, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. It's been a minute.
It's been, yeah. Thanks for always being there when we just need your expertise. We do appreciate it and not take it for granted. I mean, we want to do a quick introduction, and then we can just have that conversation, the fireside conversation that we usually have.
Carlo, you know I don't like introductions.
It's just going to be your name right now, that yeah.
No, but I have a few hats I wear. You know, my name is Calvin Ayubaifiri Emmanuel. I consult for the government, the National Assembly side, and the executive side, a few companies in the private sector, and a few concerns in business as an entrepreneur. So that is a brief summary.
Gotcha. I mean, we'll take that. We'll take that from you, yeah, Kevin. We'll take it from you. So, Kevin, no, the backdrop is the 2024 NNPC annual report. But before we get into that, could you just get an overview? Lots of stuff has happened. New laws have been passed. I see the GDP is doing well because of crude oil. We've got some gas headlines that have been very, very good. Even on the Dangote side, Dangote wants to increase output. I heard it's bringing in the Americans to do that for him. Just give us an overview of the milieu of the Nigerian energy ecosystem. What's happening? What should we put our eyes on? What should we be looking out for in the total ecosystem, as it were?
Very good question. When the president changed the board and management of NNPC, the hopes were very high. Early April, that this was finally going to be the beginning of a new era. I remember somebody who is like a senior. We're having a conversation and said, Calvin, this is the final act. This is the last chance that entity has to actually turn a corner and become the pillar and the backbone. But the biggest problem I've seen that NNPC has today is the governance problem. There's a serious governance problem. And that cascades into all the other issues it has. And the governance problem is that the State House, the presidential villa, Aso Rock, the seat of power, and all the other people who surrounds the corridors of power, they just do not want to let go of NNPC. And I've said this openly to the government. I've said this in private meetings. I've said this on TV interviews. I've said this on radio. I've said this to the government directly, that it needs to let go of NNPC. As a matter of fact, this past week I was on Channels TV, on Lunchtime Politics, and I said it, that the presidency needs to let go of NNPC. The only way to save that entity is to let go of it. Let go of sending directives and memos. Look, NNPC is a limited liability company. They have no business taking instructions from the villa. It's no longer a corporation. It's a limited liability company. A situation where you have memos coming, every week to a limited liability company, it's absurd. It's absurd because by organizational structure, if you see the appointment letters, the 2 appointment letters, because there was only one that was made known to the public that was flying around on social media, you see that Wale Edun, as the coordinating minister of the economy, was the one who actually signed off on their letters of appointment. He was the one that signed off, which means that NNPC is supposed to report to a beneficial owner, that is the Ministry of Finance Incorporated. And in the proposed amendments of the PIA, it says that I think either section 79 or 36, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be amended. Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated will be collapsed, and Murphy will get full 100% control as a beneficial owner of NNPC on behalf of the federal government of Nigeria. So for me, I am at a loss at how you still send memos and give directions and orders to a limited liability company. The board and management are supposed to report to its shareholder. The shareholder is the beneficial owner. That's Murphy. Murphy reports to the minister. The minister reports to the shareholders. And the shareholders now are not just the presidency, because the federal government is just one of the shareholders. The federal government of Nigeria is different from the federal government. A lot of people don't understand this.
The federation, federation.
The federation is made up of the federal, state, and local governments. So a shareholder is not just the presidency. The presidency represents, the federal government. But you have the states, you have the local governments. So it's not the job of the presidency to give orders to a limited liability company and break that chain of command in the organizational and governance structure of the entity. That's the biggest challenge that it faces today.
Gotcha. So I mean that's a key one there in terms of, like you said, NNPC is still under the we've done the paper change, but operationally it's still an ATM of the quote unquote presidency. That is fantastic. Do you want to dovetail into the report now? I know last time you were here we talked about the AKK. I'm still want to get updates on that. I saw reports in the papers that AKK had crossed the river. Was now sort of like has now started to move out towards the north. In the annual report, I saw NNPC had Gwagwalada, had Kano, Maiduguri, and all that. Is there any update on the AKK you can give us on the pipeline from the south all the way to the north?
The pipeline, OB3 fits into AKK because OB3 is supposed to provide gas both from the southern side in Edo State and then from the eastern side, River State, Abia, Enugu, crosses the River Niger. They did horizontal directional drilling, what is called HDD, and they were able to cross the River Niger finally after spending a shitload of money. The AKK project that links the OB3 down to Kano, they're still working on the Abuja-Kaduna leg, I think. They're not done yet. It is one of the most expensive pipeline projects I've seen in the world. At $4.2 million per kilometer, it's double what it costs to even build an export pipeline. I think the last time I was on, we were talking about pipeline construction costs. And I mentioned that when Russia was going to build there was a partnership between the Russian government and the Chinese government. Rosneft, Gazprom, and Sinopec. They built a 5,000 kilometer pipe from Russia through Siberia and Mongolia to China to take the export gas from Russia to China. And they didn't spend up to half cost per kilometer what is costing NNPC to build AKK cost per kilometer, which also explains this issue about Lagos Calabar Coastal Road. It's absurd. For the longest time, Nigerians have been asking the Minister of Works, what is the cost per kilometer? I just refuse to reveal what the cost per kilometer is. Why are you afraid or refusing to release what the cost per kilometer is if you're sure that, everything is done through due process?
Yeah.
At $4.2 million per kilometer, it's the most expensive pipeline project for 614 kilometers.
But is there progress on it though? So we're moving along. The north is going to get this gas.
The most difficult part of that was the crossing of the River Niger, which they've done with horizontal directional drilling.
Okay.
That's the most difficult part of it. But then you still need feed gas to inject into those pipes and ensure that there is, uptime for the pipeline.
Gotcha.
And there is high pressure on the pipes to supply gas. There's going to be a pressure metering and reduction station in Gwagwalada because NNPC has an IPP, which CHIMEC, a Chinese EPC that is building an IPP in Gwagwalada. Gas and power part of NNPC wants to go into
I saw that
business.
Yeah.
I don't know about Maiduguri. Maiduguri, is in terms of security, it was better than what it was many years ago. But I'm still, I don't know what the security situation is and how that will affect. Because bandits terrorists, they keep vandalizing power lines and transmission infrastructure in the Borno State. So I don't know how they're going to manage with that. But I think the addition of an IPP in Abuja is really going to be beneficial for AADC, and power generation in the FCT and surrounding areas. And I've always said that the power business is one business that NNPC has what they call a comparative advantage with because of gas, but it needs to build pipeline infrastructure, and there needs to also be a serious roundtable because, the bonds that the government set up to pay the power generating companies, I think over 4 trillion naira, they've hit an impasse. The government is asking the generation companies to write off nearly 2 trillion naira of the monies that they claim are being owed, and the power companies are saying no, that they're not going to write it off. And it's going to set them back. So that has hit an impasse. And Carlo, if you look at the power, value chain, you see that there are several issues. But there's a major issue with pricing for gas, pricing for power, and theft, commercial theft, technical losses, right? Nigeria does not have strong legislation and enforcement for people who steal power deliberately, number one. There's the issue with technical losses. There's commercial losses, which are theft. Then there's technical losses. Then there's the issue of the pricing for power. You have a situation where for band B to D in Nigeria, for example, power is priced about 34 cents per kilowatt. This is a political issue, so I don't like getting into it, because whenever you bring up this issue and you bring up the economics of it and the reality of the economics of it, people are always very in their feelings. I don't blame Nigerians, because Nigerians are going through the ringer. The economy is tough for a lot of people. A lot of people cannot afford to pay house rents. People are struggling to eat. People are struggling to do basic stuff. So, they have a right to complain about increasing power costs. But the reality on the ground, and this is the result of inflation and FX revaluation, and how that has affected the price of power over the last 5 to 6 years, is that power at 3 to 5 cents per kilowatt is just not realistic. Where it's realistic is anywhere between 10 to 12 to 14 cents per kilowatt, And if you can't price power reasonably, then it means that the generating companies are going to struggle to pay for gas. About 19 of 27 plants today, 19 of about 23 or 24 thermal plants run on gas. And if they are struggling to pay for gas, it also means that the aggregators will not be able to meet up or have an incentive to invest or sustain, maintaining high pressure on those pipes, because, gas goes through processes. For onshore gas, you have to, if you're not reinjecting it to do well optimization, you're trapping, you're sending it to a node to calibrate pressure, you're sending it to a central processing facility, you're converting from wet gas, you're treating, and then you're separating those gas, and the methane is piped for generation. And if you look at it, under domestic gas delivery obligations, sections 108 of the PIA, gas is $2.13 per standard cubic feet. Pipeline transportation cost is $1.13 per standard cubic feet. So you're looking at anywhere around maybe $3.16 per standard cubic feet. So these three problems are the major problems for power. Now, if you come back to the issue about NNPC IPP, my biggest worry for NNPC going into power, which is a very good business for them, and they have comparative advantage with, is how can you manage these financial modeling issues and structural issues that the government lacks the political will to address, because it's afraid that if it goes ahead and says that we're going to increase the price of power, there's going to be a protest for good reason, because the government is fiscally reckless, by the way. So.
All right. So that's a good way to just introduce the whole topic. Let's go into the NNPC report. As a civilian, right, I look at this report, I see net income, 5.4 trillion, dividend 4.3 trillion, earnings per share 27. This is better than any results I've seen from Nigerian banks, with Dangote Cement, anyone. Natural gas production looks up here. Crude oil production, it says it's 202 million barrels a day, although I know it's about 1.5, the latest report I saw in terms of output. Just as an industry person, what is this report? Give me the good, the bad, and the doubtful about this report. What is good about this annual report? What should we hail? What should we be happy about this 2024 report from NNPC?
Kalu, if you look at the cost of sales, you will have a good laugh.
Yeah.
If you look at the cost of sales for what
No,
constitutes.
let's do the good one first, because there has to be something good.
Is there a good one? Is there a good one? They're saying they did $30 billion in sales, and then you did about 74% cost to income.
So 5.4 net income to you. I'm playing devil's advocate here. If a Nigerian company is doing 5.4 net, this is cash to the Nigerian Federation.
On 45 trillion, it's Kalu, it's insane. It's insane.
Okay.
45 trillion, 5.4 trillion naira net income, especially when you look at the cost of sales, it doesn't make any sense. And the reason it doesn't make any sense is because I'll break down the cost of sales. From the cost of sales, when I break down the cost of sales, you begin to see all the loopholes and see all the issues. And then I'll try to do an x-ray of the group, the major areas of the group, and talk about what I've observed, what the holes are, and how I think that this annual financial statement is just complete window dressing for a very, very horrible and bad situation that they have. They delayed this report for a long time because I'm aware this annual financial statement has been ready since July, August, and it's been delayed until now. And I don't know why it was delayed until now. If you look at flow station expenses, Kalu, first of all, in 2024, I think, I'm not exactly sure, but total crude oil lifted for all for all the operators, JV partners, PSC partners, JV partners, direct producing, NNPC, FTSA, total crude oil lifted was around 566 million barrels. And NNPC says that what it lifted as a share of that is 202.3 million barrels, which means that should be net of royalties and tax oil. That's what it says. Okay? Kalu, the share of NNPC on a cumulative average basis, if you look at it, is anywhere between around 53.6% gross of royalty and tax oil. So how are you lifting 202.3 million barrels from 566 million barrels of crude? That's the first question I have for them. That's the first question.
So in essence, you are saying the lifting is, we're not getting the fee income, or the lifting is the volume is too small. I want you to be very clever.
The volume needs to be audited. The Auditor General of Federation is his job. This is his work. It's the job of the Auditor General of Federation to look at it properly, to review all the contracts, and not just rely on the accounts from revenue generating agencies or the accounts. It's his job to look at it properly, to do a thorough forensic audit, look at the calibration of the LACT units, lease accountability custody transfer units, look at all the flow meters, flow stations, look at the wellheads. And Kalu, I've always said that Nigeria is one of very few countries in the world, not the only, one of very few countries in the world where there is no hydrocarbon accounting structure or framework where you can tell how much crude oil comes to surface on a daily basis on a real-time basis, like a SCADA that shows you what is happening in real time, not one department or agency of government sending paper reports to the biller after 48 hours. And then they come and say, oh, today we did 1.52 million barrels gross. In 2025, people are preparing paper reports manually to tell the government how much crude oil came to surface. It's ridiculous. That's the first question. So the question you should ask is, what they are reporting, is it actually what it is? That's the first question you should ask. Number two, even at what they are reporting, 566 million barrels, 202.3 million barrels, which should be net of royalty oil to NUPRC that goes to the Accountant General of the Federation, and less the cost of the management fee for NUPRC, and then tax oil that goes to Federal Inland Revenue Service. Yeah? Is it what actually is due to the Federation? That's the second question we should ask. Number three, Kalu. All crude oil that is due to NNPC, PSC oil, JV oil, direct production oil, goes through NNPC trading. And this crude that goes through NNPC trading, a commission or a fee is charged per barrel for trading it. Whether it's going to Dangote, Dangote is paying. Dangote has been paying an average of $2 per barrel as a separate fee outside of the cost of the crude oil on the global markets. And which is what he has always complained about, that how does it make sense that NNPC is a shareholder in my company?
But
they have 7.2% equity in the company. They're still selling crude oil to me in dollars and attaching a fee, an extra commission.
So NNPC is charging itself invariably.
You're charging yourself invariably. Yeah. And then the crude oil, in fact, on this issue, early this year, the chief commission executive of NUPRC intervened and asked NNPC Trading to cap the commission it charges per barrel to Dangote at 50 cents per barrel. They did it for a while, then they reverted. So, if, for example, you're charging an average of $2 per barrel for trading the crude oil that belongs to the Federation, it means that on 202.3 million barrels, you should have earned at least $404 million. At least in commissions.
Just commissions alone.
Just commissions alone. These commissions are not reported to the Federal Inland Revenue Service, by the way, because NNPC's major, even if they say they have an office in Metama, their major operation is in Dubai, the DIFC. Right? Where is the commissions earned on crude oil traded for the oil that belongs to the Federation? Why are they not paying taxes on that commission, less their expenses to the Nigerian government? The same thing goes for the other companies, all the IOCs, the independents, that are lifting oil from Nigeria. Dangote, for example, the same thing. In fact, it's even higher. If you look at the cost sheets for the different blends of crude, there's even a blend of crude, Bonga crude. Yeah, it pays about $5.20 per barrel as commission. A separate commission, which means that if he's buying 1 million barrels of Bonga, he's paying an extra $5.2 million as commission. As a separate commission. If crude oil price is $65 a barrel, he's buying $65 a barrel, then he's paying another $5.20 per barrel. How do you now classify that in your what's it called? Your crack spread and your margins as a refiner when you're going to translate it to pricing in the local market? How do you now translate that extra commission into the market?
Okay, let me ask a question. Earlier this year, President Tinubu said that the Ministry of, who was it? The CBN should take over the revenue returns from the NNPC. That's sort of like they should report to the CBN. I think it was this year, he said, or last year. Does that have any bearing to these numbers we're seeing?
Kalu, how many people in the Central Bank of Nigeria, in Abuja here, have the technical depth and knowledge of the oil and gas sector and actually have people on the ground? So they are lame because they're as good as is what NNPC gives them that they will take. Are they on the ground to see what is going on the ground? Are they on the ground? If NNPC says this is what came to us, that's what they will take. That's why I've always said the government needs to set up an hydrocarbon accounting framework and meter and create a system end to end for measuring output on a daily basis, real time. You don't need to be sending paper reports. There's a SCADA is connected to computers, and you're seeing on a real time basis how much crude oil, how much gas, what is flared, what is trapped, what is reinjected on a real time basis. You're seeing the penalties because as they are flaring, there's a penalty based on the PIA, the gazette that NUPRC has developed from the particular part of the PIA that talks about gas flaring penalties. And you're seeing what the company's operators should pay based on the gas that they flare. So it goes into your revenue structure automatically. So the question I have for you is, does the CBN have people on the ground to actually measure and say, this is what they give us in paper reports, and this is what is on the ground, and the comparison, it matches. Do they have people on the ground? The answer is no. So it's what they give them that they take.
Okay. So you've talked around the report. Let's go. Where do you want to go to next? Because we skipped over good.
I'm reviewing the cost of sales. So
So we're saying
like,
okay.
Because they said they did 45 trillion.
Yeah.
45, 46 trillion.
4.5.
They did gross profit of about 12 point something trillion. Then they did net of 5.4. And we have things like fuel station expenses. I wouldn't want to start going and breaking down all the things, line items that goes into managing fuel stations. But $1.7 billion as fuel station expenses, 2.5 trillion.
Is that in I quoting dollars? Did you say $1.7 billion?
Yes. What you have here as fuel station expenses is 2.5 trillion naira for 365 calendar days for managing 187 fuel stations. And not all of them are in service. Not all of them are in service. 187 fuel stations. What you have here is 2.5 trillion, which is the equivalent of $1.7 billion on 202 million barrels of crude.
Okay. I just will.
You have direct well expenses. Now let me explain. Direct well expenses are expenses on producing wells from wells that NNPC owns 100%, that it has FTSAs on. Because NNPC as a company does not have the capacity right now to drill crude and trap gas by itself. So it goes through contracts and brings in companies through what they call financial and technical service agreement, FTSAs. Yeah? Those direct well expenses, NNPC said that in 2025-24, it spent 2.5 trillion naira on direct well expenses. That's another $1.7 billion.
Do you know what it was before? So we can have a context to the numbers. Like if it's $1.7 billion and they were doing maybe 200, then we know, okay, this is high. Is there a way of knowing?
We don't have to look at what it was before. What we have to look at is how many blocks does NEPL, former NPDC, has direct control of that they are classifying direct well expenses on. Yes? And then we go to the technical engineering side and say, these are line items for, managing wells real time. This is the benchmark for other places. No, the terrains are different, so it's not going to be the same. The cost of producing in Nigeria or managing a well in Nigeria is not going to be the same with the cost of managing a well in Guyana or in Texas. They're different. Nigeria is a more difficult terrain, but even at that, if you do benchmarking, you can almost always tell if these costs are reasonable or not. How much crude are you producing? NEPL is not doing more than 250,000 barrels a day. So are you saying that you spent $1.7 billion on wells that are not producing more than 250,000 barrels a day? Does it make sense?
Gotcha. So the volume is down, but the cost of managing those wells is up or staying up, more or less.
The cost is up.
You
have crude handling and port charges. They said they spent $1 billion on crude handling, the handling of crude and charges at ports. If you do a breakdown, time will not permit us, or these details are very technical. These numbers doesn't make any sense. They just don't make any sense. Because they are benchmarks. There are other companies around the world doing the same business that NNPC is doing, and they have benchmarks. So when you look at that cost of sale, you can almost always say, okay, like, how are you people even coming about these numbers? The external auditors, are they actually doing a thorough audit, or they're just following, what you give to them? What's the job of an auditor?
Gotcha. Okay. So I have a question. I don't know when to ask it. It's about the investment of NNPC, but let me let you continue. But I want to come back to NNPC investment in refineries, if you may. But I'll let you finish. We've talked about.
I look at pipeline maintenance cost, 182 billion naira.
Oh my God, because I looked at the cost of sales. It's high for me. But I'm not an industry guy. I just picked entertainment. The entertainment cost is more than the cost for host community. That's one thing that I saw that I tweeted.
Entertainment costs
It's
2.5 billion a month.
it's
Entertainment,
yeah.
what are you entertaining?
It's more than
2.5 billion a month.
it's more than the host
Entertainment
community
cost.
fund. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, doesn't look too right. I mean, host community where you get your money. Even if you want to build them a school, it should not entertainment should not be more than that. But that's just me. I'm not an industry guy like you.
NUPRC as the upstream regulator has not done a lot in operationalizing the host community development trust. They've not done a lot in operationalizing it.
What should they do? The law basically says they pay to a fund, correct? Then the fund and the host community then sort of invest in the fund, right?
There's a corporate governance protocol that is stated out by law.
Okay.
That the communities must follow. So to be fair to NUPRC, I also say some of the communities have been difficult.
That's where I was going to,
yeah. We're meeting up with the terms and conditions of getting those funds. In fairness to them, but as a regulator, it's their job on a daily basis to ensure that there's compliance and there's coordination. It's their job.
Okay.
Because if you don't drive the stakeholders to meeting up with the corporate governance protocol required to have their HTTT funds paid in, the monies will sit with the operators.
Gotcha. So essentially, they have to send the money to the fund and then sort of push the host community to set up that whole corporate governance where they have a board and then they start to invest. These monies are just lying down with the international oil companies and NNPC. I'm not sure how many host community funds are operational. I know a few are. I'm not sure how many are or who regulates them to say, can there be an annual report that reports on all these host communities? I don't know who is in charge per se.
NUPRC is in charge.
NUPRC is in charge. Okay, so perhaps they should then do an annual report and say we have so and so funds licensed, so and so are operational, so and so have done annual reports, so that people have a sense. Many people on this space, I'm sure, belong to communities that have host community funds, development funds, but don't even know what's going on. So that sort of report, if it's out, can be highlighted, can be put out on social media, and folks can then sort of peek in and see what is happening with their own community. I know lots of people would be interested in that sort of report here.
Carlo, they said they paid gas flaring penalties of 1.3 trillion in 2024. So
is that naira or dollar?
In naira. So the gas flaring penalties goes to the upstream regulator in Paris. So it's the job of the Auditor General of the Federation to check with NUPRC and confirm that NNPC paid 1.3 trillion naira in gas flaring permits penalties to NUPRC through the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. That's the job of the Auditor General to confirm. Then depreciation of oil and gas properties over time. They said that took 3.2 trillion naira.
I'm just saying trillions. Let me ask you a question someone has asked me now, and this is germane. The 5.4, where does it go to?
The 5.4 is supposed to, the net profit is supposed to be paid to the shareholder. That's the federal government of Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
The question is for the Accountant General of the Federation. Has it been paid? That's the question.
But if it's paid, it goes to the states.
Remember in 2023, they said the 3.2 trillion naira in profit, they defrayed it for what the government was owing them. Remember that was what they said?
Yeah, we're coming to that, Kevin. That's the next topic we're coming to. Like, this question is, so that 5.4, if it is paid, it goes to FARC?
It's supposed to go to FARC.
Okay.
It's supposed to go to FARC.
Okay, Kevin, let's come to this question now. Is there a subsidy still being paid? If you read the report, there's something there, 7.1 trillion or so. It's not the security pipeline. It says energy something. Energy. Let me get it. I want to read the exact. I read it. I tweeted it, but I want you to explain to me what it means. If I understand what they are saying that when you import crude oil into Nigeria, then they assume.
Import crude oil by who? Who is importing crude oil?
Okay, but let me lay the framework for folks listening.
How is NNPC importing crude oil?
Okay,
Carlo,
look.
what is NNPC importing
No,
crude
Kevin,
oil
I want you to
doing?
hold it. So I want people to follow what we're saying, so that then we can go. So,
Okay.
essentially, this is called energy. Is it? I think it's page. Let me get the exact page.
Energy security
Energy
expense.
security expense. Okay. So what they are saying is that when they import crude oil, they assume a price, maybe $50 a barrel. But when the crude oil or the PMS or whatever is imported is then sold to the off-taker, it assumes a different price. The difference between the import price and the price assumed by the off-taker is this 7.1, no, 8.6 trillion. 8.6. So please explain that to us, please.
Carlo, there's nothing like that. NNPC is not importing crude oil. They don't have a need to import crude oil. The company that has been importing crude oil and has been importing up to, I'll say it's been importing up to 8 to 9 million barrels of crude in the last year is Dangote. 54% of the crude oil he imports into Nigeria, he uses at the refinery is imported into Nigeria. Okay? And he spent about maybe $9 to $10 million in handling costs and fees to MPA and the MASA and the likes on a monthly basis. So NNPC has no need to import crude. The vendor financing program was terminated late last year because the government collapsed the market and decided to, activate sections 205 of the PI on pricing PMS according to market forces, supply and demand, which was the removal of under recovery or removal of subsidy, like people know, right? NNPC says that the profit from 2023 was not paid to the government because they used it to defray what was owed to them from vendor financing program and DSDP. So what differential are they talking about?
So what is this thing then? It's in the annual report. It's 8.6.
Let me explain it to you, Carlo. Let me explain it to you. 312,000 barrels of crude on a daily basis in the daily crude allocation does not go to the federation. It's supposed to be the subsidy savings. And I've said this, I'm not afraid of anybody. I fear God. I'm not afraid of anybody. I'm not afraid of anybody. I fear God, but I'm not afraid of anybody. We don't have institutional integrity in Nigeria. We don't know how to tell ourselves the truth. And that's why Nigeria is not moving forward, because we don't like the truth. 312,000 barrels of crude on a daily basis in the crude allocation does not go to the federation account. That is supposed to be your subsidy savings. So where is it going to? This is the question you have to ask the government. Because this was the stock out of the 445,000 barrels of crude intervention stock that they were using for under recovery payment on subsidy.
Okay.
Yeah? That is now being saved. So where is it being saved to? Why is it not going to the consolidated revenue fund? Why?
So where's the money?
It's a question you have to ask the government.
So what is this 8.6 trillion?
Why are you paying 110,000 barrels of crude daily to militants for pipeline security fee? Why?
No, but is that what that 8.6? There's a 7.1 trillion for and it's a bit confused. Let me share with you.
Carlo, in 2024, that pipeline security fee was 78,169 barrels daily. 2025 has been increased to 110,000 barrels daily. So the question is, when you have the Navy, you have the DSS, you have the NSCDC, you have the Army, you have the Air Force, why are militants collecting 110,000 barrels of crude daily for pipelines?
7.1 trillion.
So this is a question you have to ask. Because NNPC is not importing crude, so there's nothing like export differential and import differential and price that comes to price that you give to. There's nothing like that.
So what is the energy security? What is it? It's in the annual report.
I'm giving you pointers to it. I'm not making any inference. I'm giving you pointers, and I'm allowing you and everyone who is listening this evening to make a conclusion. Why are you giving crude oil to militants for pipeline security? Why?
So there is a so let me just see what I'm hearing you saying. We had a subsidy arrangement before where we took this 100,000 barrels, and that was our under recovery payment. Now we have stopped subsidy, but that 100,000 or so barrels has still not gone back to FARC. Am I correct so far?
It's not gone back to FAC.
Okay. Then in the annual report,
It's not gone back to
it
FAC.
hasn't gone back.
And that's why the government is running 3 concurrent budgets and barely has up to 15% of his proposed capex to fund the project.
Interesting. Okay, so that's number one. It hasn't gone back to FAC. Number two, there's a pipeline payment. Number three, there's an energy security, whatever payment is in the annual report.
The pipeline payment is embedded in the energy security.
And it's a bit confusing because I see 7.1, I see 8.6. Are they saying that the pipeline thingy is the energy security, or it's not very clear to me as just looking at it as a numbers guy. I'm really not sure what they were saying. The numbers were correct, but the interpretation is what I didn't really understand what they were saying. I understand it's a subsidy because of the language they are using. They are saying it is to cover the difference between this and this. I get that, but you are now saying that subsidy hasn't gone back to FAC, and you are saying there's no subsidy. So what is this? I mean, it's in their annual report. What is it? They are trying to say something. That's why they put it there.
Carlo, you see, this is why we don't have a culture of forensic audits in Nigeria. We don't have a culture of forensic audits because if you bring a forensic auditor, you have to provide evidence and explain.
Okay.
Every item you have in your AFS.
All right.
It's a guessing game, but I'm giving you pointers.
Okay.
Where the moves are and where it's going to.
Okay, Kevin, let's also go to this other part of the front-loaded income that the government has done, the financings, the Eagle, the Leopard, and all that. They're all there. In essence, we have sold oil in advance, and then so we're paying them crude oil, but we've collected money today. What's the impact of that? What happens if oil prices go down to say 55 or 50? What happens? I mean, there are many of them in the reports. Project Leopard, Project Eagle, Project this, and they are front-loaded income. So what happens?
So, Kalu, these four sale agreements, so far they've done $14 billion. There's another $5 billion in the pipeline. I'm aware that more than 100,000 barrels of crude is going to be pledged. I don't want to give more details on it. But if that comes true, it means that some of the fossil agreements, the payments are maturing, are expiring, they're rounding them off, and new ones are going to pick up. It means that more crude will be encumbered. You can't supply your domestic refiner with the crude oil that it needs. There isn't going to be much space or room for you to actually, pay dividends to your shareholder. That's what it means.
Well, why would it be a point for dividend? It's still a sale. It's still a sale, but the money has been taken today.
No. What I'm saying is, if you do fossil agreements and you give the crude oil to a trader.
Okay.
That will remit to the banks that you're owing money for the period of the loan.
I see.
It means that dividend doesn't come to the government less the management fee.
I see.
The NNPC charges. But on the price of crude and the risk of, we had this situation some months ago where crude price drops below $60, came to about 54, 55, before it started pulling back up because of Israel's invasion of Gaza and Iran. We had a situation months ago. And what happened was I saw sheets of about 72 million barrels of crude oil that was stuck. They were allocated to be lifted, but the companies refused to lift the crude because for some of the crude, the price of the crude had dropped below the strike price. So typically when you sign fossil agreements, there is always a strike price at which you hedge against risk. So if you say XYZ Bank is lending $3 billion to ABC Corporation in Nigeria, they will want to pin a price and say that below this price, I will not take the crude. If I take the crude, you have to provide more crude to match up the equivalence of that price, that target level, that strike level. Above this price, I will take the crude, but the differential between that strike price, okay, let me be more practical. If the strike price is $57 or $56, if the price of crude drops below 56, they will not take the crude. It will be held at what they call liquor. If they take the crude, you have to give them more barrels to match up the 56, right? If the price of crude is above 56, that differential between the strike price, 56, and whatever the price of crude is, say the price of crude is 65 or 70, it will go into a debt service reserve account operated by the borrower. So, on wholesale agreements, one of the questions I've always asked, for example, on Project Gazelle, strike price was anywhere between $57 and $59 a barrel. Crude oil prices were steadily above that level for the longest time. What did the government do with the differential between the strike price and the current market price, open market rate? They had offshore debt service reserve accounts that were set up in the Bahamas. What did the government do with those monies? Why wasn't the National Assembly placed in copy? And why weren't those monies appropriated by national assemblies and known to the principal officers there?
Because it's revenue, right? In essence, just so understand, right? The Nigeria says that any revenue you get has to go to FARC, then it is shared by appropriation by National Assembly. Exactly. Mr. Buhari and Mr. Tinubu have dodged this by doing. They basically go and create a fund, then pay a dividend or a fund into that fund, then spend from that fund without going to appropriations. Buhari did it with the presidential PIDF, Presidential Something Development Fund, where he took NNPC, these dividends or whatever. He put the dividends from NLLG, the gas company, into that fund, then used that fund because National Assembly would not authorize borrowings. That's where this whole print started from. He took the dividends, put in the fund, and spent without appropriations. Mr. Tinubu has continued that same practice by creating a fund, putting revenues in that fund, and then spending. That's what you're describing. Because you don't have to do National Assembly. Okay.
Exactly. So it's like an excess crude account. The only difference is that this excess crude account does not have signatories. The state governors have no signatories to it.
Okay.
You know, it's like an excess crude account. However, now they set up these accounts. They have a fancy name for it: Debt Service Reserve Account (DSRA), and it's always offshore. So your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, Kevin, let's go to page. I don't know if you look at the page. Let's go to page 99. You see this loan to a subsidiary. I don't know if you can see it. I just shared it. If you want to follow, I just shared it on Twitter. We see loans to NNPC Energy Service Limited, NSERV. We're giving NNPC Energy NSERV 174. That should be billion. But we're getting this money from NNPC E&P, NEPL. We're getting 104 from NEPL and then from the wheel. Okay, so what is NNPC Energy Service? NSERV is, according to their report here, right above us here, NSERV. Let me.
And you said page 1, page
99. Page 99.
Page 99.
I just don't understand what I'm reading. Just. Yeah.
Page 99. Hang on a sec.
Yeah, just on I shared them on the space on my feed, guys. In case you want to follow, I've shared the table on the space. If you want to follow as well, just to understand, it doesn't make that much sense to me. You see it?
So you know, NSERV is the same entity that is in charge of disbursing frontier basin exploration.
Okay, but let me ask you my question. So if you look, this table is called loan to a subsidiary. So you see, we're borrowing we're borrowing money from NNPC, E&P. E&P, according to NNPC, if you look at above, E&P is sales. Here you too. Sales. I know you're laughing. Sales of crude and back charge of expenses. So NNPC, E&P. Hear me again. Sales of crude and back charge of expenses. But we're lending it to NNPC Energy Serve. What is NServe? Let me read what NServe is. Back charge of expenses. So you are borrowing from back charge of expenses and you are lending to back charge of expenses. It doesn't make sense to me. Please explain.
Can let me tell you something. You know, one of the reasons why companies have boards is they come up with, you know, not just a strategic direction, but they come up with rules that management must play by, yes? That's why you have board committees, correct?
Yeah.
I think up until Musa Kida came, Musa Kida has been working and doing some good work as chairman of the board, setting up board committees. The management didn't have rules to play by. Okay? So NServe is the arm of the group responsible for disbursing Frontier Basin Exploration Fund. I remember Frontier Basin, according to the PIA, has a share of profit oil and gas that goes into development of 6 different frontier basins in Nigeria. Dahomey Basin, Lower Benue Trough. You have Upper Benue Trough, which is the Kolmani Basin. You have the basin around the Hoko. Yes, you have the Chad Basin, you have the Sokoto Basin. 6 basins. Now, you have 3 different basins that Mele focused on. You have the Kolmani 89, you have the Chad Basin, the Lower Chad Basin, in Jerry local government in Borno State. And that's, I've forgotten the name now. Then you have the basin, the one in Nasarawa, Ebei A. So if NEPL say that they are loaning money to NServe, is an anomaly because based on the PIA, a section of profit oil and gas goes into the Frontier Basin Exploration Fund, and that fund is supposed to have billions of dollars in it. But what that backcharge means is that NEPL is saying they did some exploration and production activities, right, on those frontier basins. And that there's a back charge from that.
Okay, but why is it?
Frontier Basin Exploration Fund.
Okay, so you are saying that the NNPC Energy, so the guy giving them the money is NNPC E&P Limited.
Exploration and Production Limited.
Based in Benin. So the guys in Benin are lending money to the NNPC and NServe.
You know why I talked about the board when I started answering your question? I talked about the board and board setting rules of management because I wanted you to know that it's an anomaly for NEPL to be lending money to NServe, considering that based on the PIA, a percentage of profit oil and gas already goes to Frontier Basin Exploration for that NServe manages. So it's an anomaly because NServe is supposed to be liquid. So NEPL lending money to NServe is an anomaly.
So, but Kevin, I'm sorry, but people are
you following the drift?
I do, but again, I'm talking
about. It's an anomaly for NEPL to lend money to NServe because NServe brought in contractors. It paid money to do what they call exploratory drilling on those basins. The basin in Jerry local government, the basin in between Bauchi and Gombe, the Komani 89, the basin in Nasarawa. They brought in consultants, companies to do drilling. So why is NEPL backcharging NServe?
And just to be clear, the report doesn't say that NServe gave money to E&P, but it's giving money to NNPC, and NNPC is giving money to NServe. So it's like E&P gives money to NNPC, then NNPC gives money to energy sector, to NSEF. So to me, it's just a long.
It's an anomaly.
It's a wrong.
It's an
I don't know what's going on there. It doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. It's
Okay.
an anomaly because based on the PI, if you read the PI, it will say that a percentage of profit oil and gas goes into Frontier Basin Exploration Fund for the development of 6 basins in Nigeria.
Okay. So that
Anambra Basin, Upper Benue Trough, Sokoto Basin, Dahomey Basin, and Lower Chad Basin, if it's up to 6.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so let me ask the second question again on this page, same page. We have the wheel insurance. Now, I get that's a simple transaction. The wheel gave NNPC money to they borrowed money from the wheel to invest in. I think it's one of those IPPs. I think it's one in Abuja. The wheel insurance company. They borrowed 48 million from the Wheel Insurance Limited. Why are they borrowing when they have 4.5 trillion net? 5.4 net. Why are they borrowing?
Sorry, Kalu, to invest in what?
I don't know. I saw it somewhere. I can go and look for it. But the Wheel Insurance Limited is there as they gave a loan to it. They are borrowing money from them, 48 billion.
Kalu, this is my point again on board committees. If you have board audit committees and board risk committees, all of these issues will not happen because there will be governance, proper governance that will guide management. What you're explaining to me are anomalies that should not be evident in a group with different subsidiaries.
I'm not sure. And the wheel here is listed as a subsidiary. You know, it says loans to subsidiaries listed here.
Why do you have? Why is NNPC setting up an insurance company? That's the first question. Why are they setting up an insurance company?
I'm trying to find exactly what they do. I know I read it. I forget the pages. So.
Kalu, why is NNPC setting up an insurance company? Explain the business case to me.
You are the expert.
Because the government is not supposed to approve his license to set up an insurance company. NNPC is the custodian of Nigeria's oil and gas assets and the concessionaire. Why are you setting up a subsidiary insurance company? To do what? Are there no insurance companies in Nigeria?
I'm going to find the exact the transaction. I know the wheel funded something. But my question for that is just why they are borrowing when they have all this quote-unquote P&L, profit after tax. Maybe they are cash. No, profit is not cash. I get that. But I'm just saying, if they can generate all this profit, why are they really borrowing? And just a question in the air. Maybe they will say, oh, according to the PIA, they can't. Maybe that's what answer I was looking for, but I don't see it. So let me come to my...
Kalu, the NNPC does not have any business setting up an insurance company.
All right.
They don't.
I'm just asking you. So I get that. And folks are going to ask to speak, and I'm just waiting for a while. Last question before I let Namdi speak. Last question, sir. Page 92. The total value of all the front-loaded investment, the front-loaded sales is about 4.9 trillion. Just call it 5 trillion. 5 trillion. That's if you take Project Falcon, Panther, Leopard, Yield, Bison. This is as at 2023, mind you. As at 2023, we're looking at page 92. It's about 4.9 trillion. So just a nice 5 trillion. As at 2023, we haven't added anything that was done from 2023. This has a cost. Is it conceivable that this 4.9 trillion, because it's a contract liability, what's the impact of this 4.9 trillion with the profit that they have made, the 4.9 they have made? Because this is loans I think they've gotten from these guys, right? When I say Project Falcon, they took money from them, right? That's what it means. Like for instance, Project Leopard, they took 1.2 trillion from Project Leopard, and that's revenue that they have received from Project Leopard. They took money from them, front loaded. Then they're going to sell crude oil. The crude oil goes to Leopard in quotes. Then Leopard will pay the bank, then pay back NNPC the difference between what they have taken today and what the crude oil is sold in future. That's what's happening, right?
So, Carlo, when you structure forward sale agreements, what I've seen so far is that you can either structure a forward sale agreement with a trading company,
okay,
international trading commodity trader, number one, or you can have co-syndicates. So you have a bank do syndication with a trader. So, for example, you do a forward sale agreement of $2 billion. The bank is collecting $1 billion. Trader is collecting 500 million. Another one is collecting 500 million. Or the bank is collecting everything. So in situations where the bank is the only syndicate, what you have is they appoint a trader as a collector. Right? They take the crude, they sell the crude, they remit the money less, what I explained about strike price and difference between strike price and open market rate. And they have their management fees and handling fees in that regard. So in these loans, from what I've seen typically, London Interbank offered rates typically for frontier markets anywhere around 6% per annum. So Nigeria has a country risk premium that they add in pricing these loans when they are doing book building. Anywhere around 3 to 4%, sometimes it's higher, but around 3 to 4% because the credit rating has improved. Fitch is now B, the stable outlook. Moody's is gone from CA1 to B3. And then you have facilitation fees, which is strange because I've not seen facilitation fees of anywhere between 2 to 4%. Facilitation fee now is going up to 4%, which doesn't make any sense. So you have anywhere around 12 to 14% per annum. Carlo. 12 to 14% per annum. That's the interest that's paid
on this
crude.
12%.
Yes. Project Gazelle was around Project Gazelle was 11.85% when you add the secured financing rate or LIBOR. You add the country risk premium, and then you add the facilitation fees. It came to 11.85%. So CRP and SOFRI was like 9.5, anywhere between 9 and 9.5. The facilitation fee was about 2.3% or so. That goes to consultants.
Okay.
The consultants are an anomaly. The reason why the consultants are an anomaly because in the book building process, there are fixed commissions that are supposed to be paid one-off. Right? Fixed commissions. But a situation where you have people who embed themselves as consultants, and they layer themselves in to be earning fees for the length or duration of that facility, then you know that you have an anomaly.
Okay. Well said. I'm going to come back to you on this because if you look at it, I want to get folks to speak. I know Nandi and your mentor and also didn't want to speak, so I'm going to get them to ask you questions. But I just have a final question for you, but don't answer, so just take the folks. There's a page there that answers our question, section 28, restricted funds. That's on page 81. It does say about 1.3 trillion has been restricted as external funding. And external funding represents the cash balances restricted for funding contractual obligations, which is the question I was asking, that we're making 5.4 trillion profit, but it's not really cash because that is profit based on sales. But the cash has not come to Nigeria because 1.3 trillion in cash has been set aside to cover these contractual agreements we've had, which explains why we are borrowing from will or we're borrowing from equity and giving to any. There's no cash in the system. There's profits, but no cash. Nnamdi, hi. How are you doing? Thanks for holding on so long with Kevin speaking to us. Do you have a question for Kevin? Kevin?
No worries. Carlo, thank you so much. Kelvin, good to be on a platform with you.
Hi, Nnamdi.
Good evening. And I appreciate both of yours insights. So first of all, granted, I haven't looked at the details in terms of the balance sheet and the P&L of this recent release. It's clear that this is atrocious as far as NNPC is concerned. It's clear there's abnormalities and anomalies within this financial, and it's even atrocious the fact that we're having to wait, almost an entire year to actually get the end of year results, etc. Assuming that the fiscal year ends in December, which I believe it does. The other thing, and Kelvin, keep me honest here, because in addition to these porous results, the other thing that we're getting wind of is apparently, according to some kind of Senate investigation, I think Ned Nwoko spoke to it, there are some missing accounts from NNPC up to the tune of, in the hundreds of billions, even trillions. So I want to get your perspective on that. Then the second thing is that there's anecdotal rumors that we're potentially looking to sell joint venture interest that we have, so liquidating certain positions that we have in oil blocks and joint ventures. Want to get your perspective on that. But the third thing that I have, which is not a technical question or even a financial question, is that, Calvin, you mentioned that governance is the issue as far as NNPC is concerned. But, there's nothing in these results and nothing associated with NNPC that we haven't known for the last 40 years, which is that NNPC has been an informal piggy bank for various administrations and presidents in Nigeria. And the preponderance of our national wealth continues to be drained. And this is happening in the face of what is patent state failure in Nigeria today. And so we have seen that all governments have lacked the capacity nor willingness to fix this issue. And the only other key stakeholder that can possibly intervene is us in civil society, which is we need a people-driven mechanism to enforce accountability and transparency with NNPC. And I've, reached out to each of you and said, hey, here's a mechanism that I'm proposing. What do you think about that? Because this is the only way that we can stop this hemorrhaging. And the reason why this is important is that in my research and my analysis and my writings, I believe that Nigeria is 3 to 5 years away from complete state failure, which is that the center will not hold and we'll have anarchy in that country. And that's what's happening today. And we can no longer trust on any institution, whether it's political, religious, traditional, etc. to do it. It's us in civil society, me, you, and the people on this call that have to go and do that. And we have to build the mechanisms to do that. And the reason why this is a salient point is that, when Nigeria falls, it's not going to be because of these actors in NNPC or the political class, etc. It's going to be because of me, you, the people on this call, who either were too intellectually lazy or uncourageous enough to mount a counter strategy, right? And I believe that we can actually mount a counter strategy. And that counter strategy is that we need to start going after specific people. Like, for instance, in the NNPC example, the management team. Go beyond your typical judicial process and all that nonsense, but we in civil society have latent powers that we can use to go after them. One example before I get off is that, Paulino Sokoronkwo, who was a general manager at NNPC, he was accosted by the FBI because he took money from ADAX, which is a subsidiary of Sinopec, I think $2.1 billion that he was laundering in California, buying real estate, and they got him. We can absolutely do the same thing with so many of these managers at NNPC because a lot of them are dual citizens in other countries. So even if we can't get them in the Nigerian context, we can get them externally. So where do you stand on this in terms of a civil society-driven approach to managing this issue? Because we're all dying from this.
Okay. Yeah. Now, just for Kevin answered. So, just to be clear, it's not when. That's Kevin. Now, that's your opinion, right? It's not a guarantee Nigeria is going to fail. Just want to make sure that I get that out there. You made a comment and said when Nigeria fails. No, that's not guaranteed. It's not given. Anything can happen. But Kevin, go ahead, sir. He has two questions at the very, very top, which are oil related. They talk about the missing billions, and if you can take that and as well, that will also be fantastic, sir.
Nnamdi, please don't mind me. Can you come back? Remind me. The first question was about the monies that Wadada.
The same is missing, yeah.
Shumole has been on about.
Then he said sale. He said sale of some JVs, the JV sales.
Okay. Yeah. So on that, on the missing monies, I think you have to go back to undocumented crude. I won't speak much on it because I have some information in confidence I don't want to bring to the public. I don't think I'm the right person to. The details are too sensitive, to be honest with you. But there is a history of undocumented crude in Nigeria. There is a history. I think there's a Presidential Committee on Crude Recovery at National Economic Council that is in charge of that. They are working on it. But I can't speak to it. I'm sorry for now. What the National Assembly has been probing, I don't know if it relates to the undocumented crude, history of undocumented crude, and the fact that certificate of quantities that were issued by National Printing and Minting Corporation, issues around certificate of quantities. I won't speak much on it. Then on the selling down of JVs, I think it's a bad decision. I don't think the solution is to sell down the JVs. I think the path forward is for you to solve first the governance issue. There's a governance issue that I started with when I opened this evening. The State House practically breaks the protocol and violates the corporate governance structure that has been set in place. And if you don't fix that governance issue, you can't fix anything else. Selling down the JVs is not going to amount to anything. I think there are just people around the corridors of power close to Mr. President that are interested in cashing in on it, trying to pressure to see that they sell JVs and they use third-party companies to buy those interests. I don't think it's for the good or interest of NNPC for those JVs to be sold.
Okay,
and I think the National Assembly should oppose it.
But Kelvin, just to play devil's advocate here, why not? I mean, we need cash, not just cash, we need dollar cash. We have these assets here. Why can't we sell them to invest in the coastal roads, railways, health? Why? No, it's a serious question.
Kalu, so I said earlier, that the Minister of Works, it took him having an online and on TV battle with Rufai Hosseini of Arise TV for him to finally come out and grudgingly admit that this is a cost per kilometer. Is there a system to, first of all, audit that the cost per kilometer is, if you put it on the benchmark, it checks out, considering that it's concrete road? Is there a system to audit what is allocated to $10 billion that they allocated?
No, there is none. There is none. But if there was, so is the issue, if the government came with a framework and said, we're going to sell JVs, we're going to go to a PTF type fund, it's going to be ring fenced, it's going to be audited, and it's going to go towards project, would you be agreeable to that sort of arrangement?
Kalu, I think one of the most consequential funds and the funds that has been well managed, they've done a good job so far, was what Olusegun Aganga, Shamsuddin Usman, former finance minister, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala set up the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And it was, the kickback, the governor's kickback, because they didn't want the ECA to be collapsed into, even if it was not fully collapsed, but like the revenues that were coming to the ECA, they wanted to be sharing the money. But the Sovereign Wealth Fund has so far been well managed. Even if I think that, for example, in the reorganization of NNPC, a share of NNPC should be given to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. That's what obtains. And Saudi Arabia, the Public Investment Fund in Saudi Arabia owns 60% of Aramco, and they get dividends of anywhere between $12 and $15 billion on a yearly basis to the Public Investment Fund. Because I don't believe that any dividend, however small, that is paid to the shareholders should be spent fully and totally in every financial year. So the solution is not to sell down the JVs. The solution is to focus on governance and reorganize the entity to optimize the assets and bring in more dividends and taxes
So, Kelvin, if I may, then what about a civilian approach? Because I think it's clear that the government neither wants to nor has the capacity.
Inamdi, unfortunately, I don't support some of the suggestions that you proposed. I am a believer that there are civil ways to handle issues, and I believe that the justice system should take its course. I think the CSOs should keep on shining light on these issues, and keep on exposing these issues and work with law enforcement, But I also think that at the end of the day, respect the people in these entities. They're human beings just like you and I. And whatever the frailties are, it's important to give them their dignity as human beings and respect them and allow the system to do its work. That's what I believe.
Okay. Let's get who's mentor. Your mentor. I think you've been next. Thanks, Namdi. Your mentor. You have a question for Kevin? He's dropped off. Your mentor, ask back and I'll put you back. Let's get Oxley Tech. Oxley Tech. Oxley Tech going once. Yeah, please go ahead, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the question I have for Calvin, what in terms of does he now know when NNPC? Sorry, is it not NNPC? NNPC and Dangote. Does he know when they are going to finally go public?
Did you hear him? He's asking when you think they're going to go public, i.e., sell equity to Nigerian investors. Do you have any insight to that? Kevin, I can't hear you if you're speaking. Just so you know, I can.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah, please. Can you just come again if you don't mind?
He's asking when. Do you have any insights on when NNPC and Dangote are going to offer their shares for subscription?
Well, I understand that Dangote is going to come next year. I don't know which will go first. If the fertilizer will go before the refiner will go before the fertilizer. I think the fertilizer will go first because Dangote just signed a partnership with Honeywell to come in and supervise the process, the EPC process for the expansion from 650,000 barrels to 1.4 million barrels and build a second train. And that will make it the largest refinery in the world ahead of Reliance's refinery in India. So I think fertilizer will go before the refinery because they might want to build a second train and expand the capacity first before it goes out for an IPO. So I can say that in 2027 you'll see an IPO from Dangote, but fertilizer might go first because fertilizer is a separate business from the refinery, even if they exchange feedstock, so yeah.
Yeah, Kevin, question for you. Just in terms of the business case for the refinery and the petrochemical, and the refinery itself and the petrochemical company, the petrochemical company is already exporting fertilizer to America, to Brazil. If I came to you and I had ₦1 million, which do you think has there's no word in better, but which has a better business case, the petrochemical side or the refinery side? Which do you think over the next 25 years is going to provide more return on investment for an investor? Which one, in your view?
So I can tell you that Dangote currently has 30 million tons installed capacity for fertilizer. He intends to raise it to 9 million tons. And of course, the fertilizer business is also grouped with all the other regional businesses. Is going to build the fertilizer. In fact, there's the EPC for the Dangote fertilizer plant in Gode in Ethiopia. I think 2.5 million tons per year, or 30 million tons if I'm not mistaken. 2.5 million tons is started in the city of Gode in Ethiopia. So Ethiopia started producing gas in their border close to Somali region. The Chinese are doing EMP for the Ethiopian government, and GDL group is going to take the crude from the drilling there, and then the associated gas will be given to Dangote to produce fertilizer. Ethiopia has a huge agriculture business. Ethiopia is now the largest grower of wheat in the entire continent of Africa, the largest grower. As a matter of fact, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia said in 2025, they've planted 48 billion seeds in 2025. 48 billion seeds in 2025. So the regional fertilizer businesses of Dangote are warehoused in the group, the fertilizer business as a group. Just like Dangote currently, I think, does about 52 million tons of cement, if I'm not mistaken, around the continent. And all of that cement operations are warehoused in the group, So I'm not a banker, so I don't know how this is going to structure the fertilizer business in Ethiopia and the other places where there's going to be fertilizer plants around the continent are going to be warehoused in the group. And if when you do an IPO in Nigeria, and whatever revenues that comes to the regional fertilizer operations around the continent are going to be warehoused in the group as an entity, and going to report to the group, But I think the fertilizer business is very, very big. I think there's a plan to grow the fertilizer business to about 20 million tons around the continent within the next 5 to 7 years. But however, when you look at the refinery, refinery is the cake. Refinery is the cake because if you go to 1.4 million barrels per day, you're going to be doing anywhere around 130 to 135 million liters of PMS on a daily basis. You're going to be doing just nearly 100 million liters of diesel. That dwarfs any operations around the world, anywhere in the world. You're going to be doing anywhere around 60 million liters of aviation fuel, jet A1, and then you have other derivatives. You have non-transportation fuels like, Dangote has one of the most sophisticated sulfur recovery units in the world. So, when you refine crude into naphtha and then you distill with the in the refinery, you produce sulfur because crude oil has sulfur. Even if Nigerian crude has the lowest sulfur in the world, at 0.15% compared to sulfurs crude from other places that has up to 0.30 to 0.5%. The sulfur recovery unit, the SRU, ensures that the sulfur is recovered, and then that sulfur that is recovered is now treated into what they call sulfuric acid. That is also a derivative for manufacturing. Then you have things like petrochemical feedstock that is used for polyethylene, polyvinyl, polypropylene crystals, plastics, and all of that stuff. Quite a long list of manufacturing inputs for B2B. Then you have residual fuel oils that you can put in a vacuum distillation unit and process into base oil. So the value chain is very complex and is huge
for refining. So just final question.
But
So
if you put it head to head, the refinery business, in the long run, is going to give you more value than the fertilizer. But the fertilizer is just as big because 1 metric ton of fertilizer trades between $370 to $400 per metric ton, and there's a huge demand for urea, around the world.
Okay, and just follow-up question, right? It doesn't matter if he's going to import all his crude oil. Will it change any of the return dynamics, or he has to does it matter if he uses Nigerian crude? Does the ROI change it anyway?
So I'll tell you that in your crack spread, like I said, Nigerian crude, and about 34 blends of Nigerian crude has the lowest level of sulfur in the world. API degree of above mostly 31.1. So the level of sulfur recovery is lower than for the crude that you import into Nigeria. And the transportation fuels you get from Nigerian crude, which are lighter grade crudes, is actually 80-20. So you get around 80% transportation fuels and 20% non-transportation fuels. But for crudes that has density that are higher, and then the API degree that is lower than 30 degrees or 31.1 degrees, you get transportation fuels of like 60% and non-transportation fuels like petrochemical feedstock, residual fuel oils, like your what's it called now? You know, quite a number of those non-transportation fuel derivatives. You get 40% from crude that has a higher density with a lower API degree. So it's just a matter of, you know, the company doing its economics and asking itself how much transportation fuels do we want in a crack spread compared to non-transportation fuels, and what makes sense per time, considering that heavier grade crudes are actually cheaper than lighter grade crudes, you know, and you know, do this. But it costs money to bring in crude into Nigeria. Handling of crude costs money. I was speaking earlier and I said that is on about 650 million barrels of crude. 650 million dollars worth of crude on the monthly basis. He spends about $10 million monthly handling costs. Then in Nigeria, I was speaking earlier, I said that there are grades of crude that has another extra $5.20 commission for the operator or the JV partner giving to their third-party trader and then selling to him, that doesn't incur when he buys crude internationally. You know, so these are the variables that we have to look at, situate, and look at and put on the table and say, okay, on Nigerian crude, you have low sulfur, you get more transportation fuels and non-transportation fuels, but I'm having to pay an average of $3.50 as extra commission to buy Nigerian crude. On the international crude, is $5 to $6 cheaper than Nigerian crude because I don't have to pay those commissions that are imposed on me despite domestic crude supply obligations. But I get 40% non-transportation fuels than transportation fuels, you know. And the level of sulfur is higher, which I can convert into sulfuric acid and sell to B2B companies for their manufacturing and inputs. So all these are things that, you know, the management of the refinery has to sit down and look at and say what makes sense for us, what's the best path to go. But I'll tell you that there's nowhere in the world where you have you're a major producer of crude and then your major flagship refiner. After all crude in the world is refined. What's the purpose of crude oil if it's not put into a refinery to refine into derivatives? You know, what's the purpose of it? So why do you have a situation where Dangote has sunk in $20 billion and he wants to put an extra $5 billion to increase capacity and build a second train, and he cannot source crude from his markets in Nigeria and is having to import crude, look for vessels to import crude into the country? Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. And you even have the regulator delaying permits sometimes for him to approve permits for him to bring in his products, his vessels to come or leave Nigeria. This is a fact. So all these are things that you want to ask yourself, because one of the reasons why he built the refinery in the first place, you know, was the comparative advantage of Nigeria being a member of, not being a member of OPEC, because, you know, I've told you I don't see the economic benefits going forward of staying as a member of OPEC. You know, Nigeria being a major crude oil producer that has been doing this business for 57 years. What's the point of you having a refinery in Nigeria if you cannot source crude oil in Nigeria? Does it make sense? Why will you have a refinery here and then you import crude oil from markets in other continents? Does it make sense? It doesn't make any sense.
All right.
India, that has the largest refinery currently, wishes that it had crude oil, which is the reason why you've seen that despite the sanctions on Russia, you know, in 2022, after what happened, and there were sanctions, Russia was placed on an oil price cap of $60. Now it's been reduced to 45. One of the things that the consequences of invading Ukraine was that they expelled Russia from what they call the SWIFT system that connects about 13,000 banks around the world. That SWIFT headquarters is based in Belgium. More than 150 countries are members of that SWIFT system, which means that Russian oil and gas companies can't open LCs to export Russian crude. So you have Russia operates some of the largest shadow fleet ship systems in the world, where they ship crude under sanction to countries like China, to countries like India, and through ship-to-ship transfer, bunkering hubs, and they're able to bypass OFAC at the U.S. Treasury, and they don't come under sanctions. Now, India wishes they had crude. China wishes they had crude. They don't have crude in commercial quantities. They're having to import. If Nigeria is a major producer, what is the advantage of being a major producer if your refiner cannot source crude in Nigeria and you're having to place all kinds of bottlenecks and roadblocks for him on his part to succeed? Considering that NNPC is a shareholder in the refinery, by the way.
Okay, well said. Just want to get that context for folks to follow. Let's get who I think it was who was it? Was it Kilo then Labi? So we'll do Kilo, Labi, then Abdul. Let's go to Kilo. Kevin, I sent you a DM just in case you want to know. Kilo, please go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, Kalu. I would like to make a comment and also ask a question, but quickly. It seems to me that I get all the talk we always do every year about NNPC governance and corporate governance and everything, but I don't think but it seems fairly straightforward and clear to me that any sane government, I'm not talking of a government that cares about governance, but a government that is actually moved by politics, will not really want to reform the NNPC. It makes a lot of political sense to keep NNPC the way it is, as riddled with corruption and riddled with inefficiencies as it currently is, because it's a way to buy favors from people, move funds in dodgy ways and all of that. Why give that up when you can, when using other apparatuses of state can be much more difficult and much more susceptible to accountability and probing and all of that. So so on the issue of the NNPC, I have sort of tuned off from the whole thing about asking for governance for accountability and corporate governance in the organization, because it doesn't seem to me that any government is going to do that. Not any of the people that are clamoring for transparency in the political space right now. It doesn't seem to me that any of them would ever do that, because it serves their interest, their immediate interest, to keep it going as it is. My question now is, with the political economy reality of NNPC, how do we ensure that the NNPC is able to encourage a thriving oil sector, a thriving oil and gas sector, that incentives are aligned for companies to invest in both their capabilities, onshore capabilities and offshore capabilities, and also the maintenance of oil infrastructure in the country? Thank you very much.
Kevin, that's for you. Great question. Kelvin?
Kalu,
Yeah.
Kalu, can you just highlight the question back for me? Because,
Let me. So he's basically Kilo. In summary, he's asking how can NNPC be more efficient. But Kilo, if you want to give your own language, you want to say it again. Your question again.
Okay, so my question is, given the political economy realities, being that no government is ever going to reform the NNPC, we are just doing a lot of intellectually stimulating talk here. How do we ensure that the incentives of NNPC is able to create a thriving or stimulate. No, not thriving. Is able to create incentives that will encourage companies to invest in their capability onshore and offshore, especially the local oil companies, and also invest in oil and gas infrastructure in the country. Thank you.
So, first of all, I think earlier we spoke about governance for NNPC and how governance is the biggest problem that it has. But if I'm getting you right, I think you're talking about how the government can strengthen independence, like the Renaissance, Seplat, and the likes of the independence that are springing up, that make up what they call the Independent Petroleum Producers Group. So, am I correct?
Sorry, Kelvin. So what I'm saying is this. So, local oil companies, people always say that they lack the capability to do offshore drilling and all of that. So, given the opaque system, the current system of the NNPC, how do we ensure that these local companies are able to develop that capacity to be able to do offshore E&P, and also to ensure that they invest in the oil and gas infrastructure? Given the system, I'm not talking of the ideal system of where there is accountability and everything, which I don't think is going to happen.
So, it's first of all, I think finance is the problem for the independent. Raising finance is not very easy. And the reason I say that is because a lot of them, do PXF loans, pre-export exempt facility. Yeah, if you look at the acquisition of Shell's assets, over 500 wells, I'll tell you that anywhere around 40 to 43% of that, acquisition was funded by debt that was given by the company selling to the group, the four of them. So you can imagine four companies coming together from a consortium, and then in the acquisition model, the company selling gave a debt of around 42% that is recoverable with gas. So the company will take the gas, some of the associated gas trapped, and put it back into the IJVC that processes LNG. You can imagine. So you see that there is a financing problem. That's the first problem that the independents have. I think it's going to get better over time. I think they are going to grow. And if they keep a lot of retained earnings and invest back into the business, expand the size of the business, they will grow over the next 5 to 10 years. But there's also a matter of experience. The IOCs, the Six Sisters, they have the kind of experience, the technical depth that the independents don't have because they've been in the business for decades. So it's not just about you winning bid rounds and getting blocks offshore, and raising money. You also need experience. I think that experience, you cannot buy it with money. I also think that you cannot fast forward it. You need to allow the process to take its course. So it will take time for you to see the independents that operate onshore and shallow waters to actually migrate and graduate to the point where they are able to go offshore to do what them likes of SNEPCO, EZO, Total, EMP, Chevron, and the likes are able to do. They are able to do. It will take time. I don't think there's any need for you to rush that process because the independents their legs are shaking. They're not there yet.
All right. Thanks for that. I don't know if you can move to Killer. I hope you're successful. Let's move to Labi. Then we'll do Abdul and get to Abdul Yazid. So let's do Labi. Go ahead and we'll do Abdul Yazid.
Good evening, Carlo.
How you doing?
Okay, so
if you could speak up just a bit, that would be really helpful.
So can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so thank you. So what I think is the issue here is we've really talked about the governance issue relating to NNPC. So and also the fact that it's one of the political power that government has to do what they wanted to do. So my question here is, Kelvin, how do you think NNPC can be run? In a better way, because quite all right, government would not want to give out this entity because of their political interest. So just to kind of bring out efficiency from the business, and also looking at the fact that it's coming to the public very soon. As a private investor, I won't have this set of management running a business and also want to put my money in there, or an average individual. So what kind of models or business or leadership strategy do you think NNPC can adopt? To kind of be more efficient compared to the other players in the industry.
This question.
You're the NNPC rep here, so we have to ask you.
Did you just say NNPC rep?
Yeah, you're the NNPC. You're the resident expert. So we want to know, because I think what people are trying to find out from you is this: we know NNPC is not running the way it's supposed to run, and we want this thing to run properly so there's revenue. So they are really trying to find out from you what is wrong in very succinct. What is wrong? How can it be fixed? Because we don't want it to die. We want it to be successful. I think that's where the sentiment is.
Kalu, you first, like I said, you need to fix the governance issue. NNPC is a limited liability company. It's no longer a state corporation. It's governed by Companies and Allied Matters Act, and it's governed by the PIA. Okay? Is a concessionaire of the oil and gas assets that belongs to the federal government of Nigeria, which means the FGN is its principal shareholder. But now, the FGN does not have direct access by law to dictate the day-to-day management of the entity. It doesn't. That's the problem. Because what you have is the federal government, and specifically the State House, the presidency, sending memos and directives to the limited liability company, thinking that it is still a state corporation and an appendage of the government. It's not. So that was why the PIA set up the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated. MOFI comes from Finance, MOPI comes from Ministry of Petroleum. But now, the proposed amendment is going to rest all of that beneficial ownership to MOFI, which means that any communication to NNPC, either the board or the management, is supposed to come from the State House. The State House represents the federal government. The federal government is one of only 3 shareholders in NNPC. Remember, it's the FGN. FGN is federal, state, and local government. It's supposed to come from the State House to the Minister of Finance. Minister of Finance will send communications to the beneficial owner, MOFI. MOFI will send communication to the board. That is the structure. If you neglect this structure, then there's a governance problem. Number one. Number two, the State House, the federal government of Nigeria, National Economic Council, is supposed to convene the National Economic Council on Privatization and approve a fake memo for NNPC to start the process of going to an IPO and unbundle NNPC. And that process will require for you, and I'm going somewhere, that process will require for you to do like an audit of your contingent assets and liabilities, evaluation and classification of all your assets across board, upstream, midstream, downstream. Right? So that you know what your contingent assets and liabilities are. Right? And it will help your investment bankers to be able to do their book building and price the stock appropriately. When you get to an IPO, the shareholders will sit on the table and now decide who they want to appoint to the board,
and who they want in executive management. It will no longer be State House press release. The president appoints XYZ people. This person is EVP. This person is on the board. This person is management. It will not be the president that appoints the GCO anymore. It will be the shareholders that will sit down in shareholders meetings and make a decision on who they want to be in executive management and who they want to be on the board. They will do complete business process reengineering and business transformation and determine what subsidiaries in the group are dead, are draining money. For example, you can see that the refinery businesses are dead, completely dead. They're a drain pipe. They're sucking money. They've been sucking money for the last 25 years, right? If you send NNPC to an IPO, any reasonable meeting of shareholders will vote for that NNPC refinery business to be completely yanked off. And instead, they will vote to become shareholders in any commercial entity that is operating refineries in Nigeria. So for Dangote, for example, a reasonable shareholders meeting will vote, right, for them to increase their shareholding in Dangote. And Dangote has offered for them to increase their shareholding in the refinery to 20% from 7.2% that they have currently. He has offered for them to buy more shares. Have they taken up his offer? That's left to be seen. So unless you have this process done, right, you shouldn't expect anything to change. You're just going to continue to see interference, and the management and board will, be handicapped, and then they will also do their own.
Should we just sell NPC, do a PLC or IPO, move on, and it goes to private sector? They appoint CEO.
What makes better sense, instead of to say you want to sell down JV, for example? What makes better sense is for you to actually send it to the market and say, okay, we're going to sell 30% or 40% NNPC to the markets.
30%?
Yeah.
Who? So federal government will still own it? They will still own or run it? Is that what that means?
No. I'm just giving an example. That's what makes better sense than selling down JV. That's what makes better sense. That you send it to an IPO and allow the markets to be the market. Allow the markets to run the way markets run efficiently.
So, can I probably just ask
real quick? Yeah,
okay,
go.
So if it's based on what you mentioned, that if it is sent to the market and if energy still retain a significant, percentage of the holdings, it's not going to change the leadership and the governance structure. That is actually the biggest concern. And how do you think, sending it to the market will change that?
It will change. It will change. When you have shareholders, institutional shareholders, right? You have probably like a $200 billion fund in the US that owns maybe 5% of it, and you have quite a number of those funds that cumulatively owns like 25% of it, because they bought blocks in an IPO or private placement, and they have a voting block on the board. It will change. Okay, so NLNG is one of the best run companies in Nigeria, even if I have questions for them that, our things I've seen. It's one of the best companies in Nigeria. FRS has designated them as one of the most compliant tax-paying companies in Nigeria. It's an IJBC. The government owns 49%. Total, Shell and Eni owns 51% cumulatively. Is the government able to tell NLNG what to do? No. Why?
49%.
Why? Exactly.
And the NLC have representative on the board.
Of course they have, because when you cumulatively own 51%, you have controlling votes on the board.
Yeah, and that's my view of how NNPC should go. It should be sold, have a technical partner, one, as a core investor, then sell the other equity to Nigerians, PFAs, Nigerian individuals. Let Nigerians own it, but the technical partner then come in to sort of partner. Aramco did it. They did it. They were able to get long-term funding and technology in. They have the reserves. We boost that. We create jobs. We build out this thing to a mega company. Not this moi 1.5 million barrels we are doing and celebrating 5.4 trillion. We can do much, much more, Kevin. That's just my view. So, Kevin, I know you're about to go. I think we have space for just two more questions for you. I've got Abdul Jabbar, Yazid, and I'll just take Dexter. Real quick, guys, so that way we can just tell Kevin bye and then sort of
Okay,
close out.
good evening, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead, real quick.
Okay, so I have two quick questions. Number one, what about if you do take NNPC to the markets, what about the risk of the government in power going through cronies to acquire a substantial stake in NNPC, just like we've seen in the power sector? My second question is a little bit off topic about the tax reforms. So while the benefits of the tax reforms are positive, the reforms have no control or leverage over how the government spends the additional revenue. And for 2024, the recurrent expenditure, the debt service, the federal government spent twice as much on debt service as it did on capital expenditure, which means you are essentially taking money from your future generations and spending it today. So my suggestion is, in your development levy that you are charging for NITSDA and SENI Trust Fund, why don't you portion a part of your development levy to your sovereign wealth fund, so that while you have, it's not really practical to assume that the Nigerian government will start spending responsibly overnight. You have something that when you do have a government that is spending responsibly, they would have something substantial to spend. Those are my two quick questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think your second suggestion was just spot on. That's a wonderful idea. Just even if it's 0.001, but we'll just take that money, give Sovereign Wealth Fund. I think it's a fantastic solution. I doubt they will do it because in Nigeria they will tell you that constitutional states must share the money and not spend, not save. But fantastic suggestion. Kevin, you did hear his first question. He's basically what stops all the billionaires from just buying up NNPC and not selling it to people like me?
So you remember when First Bank shares were sold by Obal Tudekro's company.
Yeah.
And person with significant control, PSC, was identified as a company that was newly registered in the UK, and it raised some concerns. So I'm aware that central bank is prevailing on that entity to resell the shares, and report on risk for person of significant control not having gone through the know your customer and KYC processes, compliance processes that the central bank has instituted from both bank and other financial investors acts, Financial Institutions Act, So when it comes to IPOs, right, there are compliance processes, the person of significant control that the system has protocol for. The question is, will it be enforced? And the reason I brought this example of First Bank is because it gives a perfect picture of what you asked. That what are the chances that unknown people, or politicians, politically exposed persons will not launder money through beneficial owners and offshore accounts to buy up these shares. If you go through that process, the chances of that happening will be reduced. So you have a block that goes to the general public in Nigeria. You have a block that goes to institutional investors. You can apportion that at IPO, and you ensure that the block that goes to institutional investors with a track record. Not the companies that were set up 24 months ago, or 18 months ago, or 12 months ago with no history. And you have people sitting on the boards who are like nominal placeholders on behalf of the real owners at the background. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
And Kevin, there are also many ways to do this, right? You can basically make the shares non-voting for a period or non-voting forever. So if you have 50% shares you want to sell to the Nigerian public, you can simply say these 50% shares are non-voting for 10 years or non-voting forever. So why would I buy your shares if I can't then use it to then have a board seat? If I want to buy your shares to make revenues, fantastic. So you have your money, you want to sell your shares to Dangote or to whatever. You sell your shares to them, they get the revenues, but they will not use those shares to get a board seat. Nobody will buy them. But they are real shares because they pay you revenue, they pay you income because it's a utility. So when you buy a company like NNPC, you are buying for income. The price will double, yes, but it's not. You're not buying Dangote because it's going to go to 1,000% in 1 week. It's for income. It's a utility like ExxonMobil, like Chevron. So make the shares transferable, but are not votable. So you can sell them, but those shares cannot count for you to vote. Only the ones that you buy from primary issue are votable. End of story. Nobody will chase you to sell it. But yeah, I think that's a good one. Yeah, so the last question, so it's going to be from Dexter Bryan. Then we'll just let Kelvin, because Kelvin has a hard stop. Dexter, you got the floor. Dexter is sorting himself out. Kevin, real quick, before I let you go, Kevin, let's just come back to our earlier conversations we're having. The Wheel is an insurance company set up in the Bahamas. It's owned by the NNPC 100%. So NNPC is borrowing money from that insurance company to invest in Gwagwalada IPP. That's what's going on. They are borrowing money from that company to invest in Gwagwalada IPP. So, yeah, I'm just telling what I'm reading, sir.
In 2012, NNPC set up a company called NNPC LNG Limited in the Cayman Islands. I have the document from the government of the Caymans in Kingston, Cayman Islands. NNPC LNG Limited is responsible for trading some equity LNG on behalf of the group. So the question I have is, why are you setting up a company offshore in the Cayman Islands? Why?
They might tell you that I don't. I mean, they might tell you it's easier to raise funds there because this company's.
What funds are you raising?
They borrowed NNPC 46 billion. 46 billion.
Okay, so the question you ask is, the monies that the companies offshore borrowed, where is it coming from?
They might have gotten it from the Americas. They might have issued their own sovereign bonds in Cayman.
Where is the paper trail?
We don't know because it's in Bahamas. That's why it's Bermuda. That's why it's quoted there, because you can't see it. So I mean, what I'm trying to go to is this, right? NNPC is making a trillions in profit, but it's borrowing money from subsidiaries, moving the money all around. You have EMP lending money to NSERV. You have the Wheel lending money to Gwagwalada and all that.
Board risk and body
all this will stop.
They will stop it.
All right. I mean,
allow it.
There's a lot here. The last one, really last one, sir, is this NNPC refinery, the one in LMA. There's a private sector company that has gone there to set up a new refinery in LMA. Hear me out, sir. This private company has gone to LMA. Number one, NNPC gave them 77 billion to buy equity from the company setting up in LMA. Number one. Number two, NNPC is then investing equity in that company. I believe it's 15%. NNPC. Number three.
Is the 77 billion meant to buy the 15% equity?
So the company is paying rent, but the 77 billion is they're buying the equity and the sweat capital of the company. That's the 77.
No, Kalu, wait. I don't understand.
I'm telling you what I'm reading. I'm just telling you what. So let me just give you the whole question. So number one, NNPC is investing 77 billion in this company coming to LMA. So NNPC's own refinery is going to sell space to this new company in LMA. The company is going to come. NNPC has invested in that company. Number one, 15% equity. Number one. Number two.
What was the valuation of the company?
Number two.
What was the basis for
Number two. The Nigerian, is it local content fund? There's a local content fund run by Nigerian whatever management content thinking.
Management Development Board. Yes.
Good. They're investing 20% in this same company. So hear me now. a private company is going to rent a federation asset, then the federation asset is investing in the private company, another federal agency is investing in this private company to set up a refinery in a federation asset. How does that make any sense?
Without the approval of the National Economic Council of
Yeah, but what? Okay, it's like me. If I go to a landlord and I say, landlord, I want to rent your house. Then landlord gives me the house. Then landlord invests in my rent. Then landlord's wife invests in my rent. Then landlord's sister buys AC for my house, but I'm in the landlord. It doesn't make any sense. Why can't the NNPC simply set up this own smaller company of their own in its own refinery? Why must a private company come from outside? I'm asking questions. Honestly, maybe someone can explain it better. I'm not accusing. I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to me.
Do you realize that, the NNPC still incurs over 100 billion naira in managing the dead refineries that it owns today?
Okay.
Yearly.
So why not sell the refinery to this company? Why not sell the entire element refinery to this private company?
So I'll give you an instance. So you remember when there was the whole Pengasin and Nupeng issue? Pengasin came out and said, that it doesn't make any sense to sell the NNPC refineries. Same Pengasin that said that the refineries were working about 9-10 months ago. They said they're engineers, they're experts, that they've gone there, they've accessed it, and they're working, they're producing, they're supplying the markets, And then you have all these unions who are in the system, embedded in the system, whose members benefit from the system. Quite a number of the workers on the payroll of the government-owned refineries are members of the unions. The government, for example, I'm not holding brief for the government or excusing them for their mismanagement and inefficiency. But the government comes and says, we're going to sell the refineries. It goes on the protest and says, we shut down the country. We shut down the entire oil and gas sector. You're not going to sell the refineries. They are government-owned entities, blah, blah, blah. You see that problem? That's
yes.
On one side. On the other side, you go and raise another for sale agreement loan, and you for sell your crude or your gas, you get the cash, you say you're putting it again in turnaround maintenance. $30 billion wasted over the last 6 years. Nothing came out of it. Right? The question you should ask is, if NNPC was in the hands of the market, not the government, will the shareholders vote to keep those assets? The answer is no.
Approved. Okay. So, all right. So, Kevin, I really wanted a question. I need to answer this because this whole transaction doesn't sit well with me. We are buying 10%. If the company is called African Refinery Port Harcourt Limited, we are buying 10% for 7 billion.
Without the National Economic Council on privatization approving, it doesn't make any sense for you to lease the assets that belong to the federation to a private company.
It's not a lease. It's not. Well, let's leave it like that. This is the thing about the report, that there's lots of information in the report, right? But it doesn't really make sense if you look at it just in terms of accounting or financial management, just common sense accounting. Why are you paying for this?
When NNPC was going to invest in Dangote Refinery in 2021, right? They were supposed to invest for the equivalent of 20%. The agreement was that they were going to provide $1 billion for 7.2%, which they currently have, and that they raised the for sale agreement alone to pay. And they were going to now put up the additional 12.78% at crude oil feedstock for
a total value of $1.7 billion. Now, they didn't exercise that right of first refusal through the period that they were supposed to exercise it and it expired. The valuation of the refinery has changed because this was production. Operations have started, the refinery has started bringing in revenue, so valuation has changed drastically. There was a council memo from the Federal Executive Council to this effect. There was a council memo. So if you're going to allow a company to operate in a federation asset and then invest in that company, you need a council memo approved.
Okay.
To this effect. So the question you should ask NNPC is, where is the council memo from the federation?
All right. I mean, I'm just saying what I read here. But I mean, Kevin, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, what we want to extract was the good, the bad, the unknown in the NNPC report. I think you've given us a lot of deep industry analysis and answers to our questions. We are civilians in this. What we really know is that NNPC in the past was very opaque. Now we're at least getting the reports. Hopefully in the next 5 years, not only will we get reports, the whole structure will be a bit clearer, a bit simpler, and we should see this 5.4 trillion profit maybe show up in FAQ. Like I asked you who owns this money, you said it's owned by the Federation. So that means that my small state should get a bit of this 5.4. This money should go towards doing something. I looked up the disbursements for university guys that are going to school. The disbursements, it's not up to 200 billion. We've made 5.4 trillion, which means that tomorrow the president can write a check debiting this NNPC net profit, debiting the cash raised from this net profit. I'm not sure it's going to be 5.4, and then use that cash and pay off the debts of every student in Nigeria that has taken a loan under the Nigerian University Loan Scheme. We can pay it off tomorrow and convert that debt to equity on all our kids. Our kids should not have to take a loan to go to university. I went to a federal university. For the 5 years on this federal university, I did not pay 1,000 naira. This is accommodation and tuition. 1,000. Call it 1,005. I didn't pay. And I went to the same federal school that is still there in Nigeria today. So why should kids today pay? Have the politicians' expenses reduced? No. So our kids should not be taking loans to go to school. The National Assembly, do they take loans to buy their imported cars? No. So why should the kids take loans to go to university? So Brazil took their royalties from their oil fields, their salt oil fields, and took it to only health and education. Only the 100% royalties. Google it, Brazil, and they are down the road. So if Brazil can do it, we should also invest in this. Like this gentleman spoke last said, take this money as a seed and do something with it. We can't be announcing 5.4 trillion net profit and people are lining up to buy pure water, pool can feed. Doesn't make any sense. There has to be real life impact of NNPC in the lives of Nigerians. So let's take this money. I even prefer primary schools. If you want to pay the school fees for every Nigerian family, this 2025, if you bring your receipt. If you had a child in school, submit your receipt. The government will give you a refund on primary and secondary school fees. Do it. It's going to be a direct dividends to Nigerian people that they own NNPC. It will be a big boost. We are paying so much for PMS. We've made 5.4 trillion. Take that money and give it back to Nigerians in one way or the other. That's just my own closing thought on this, Kevin. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Kalu, thank you so much for the privilege to be here. It's always a pleasure to be here on the space. This space has been going on for 5 years. I dare say it's one of the most respected spaces on Twitter.
Thank you.
And one of the most consistent spaces. It's amazing what you do, the ability to facilitate conversations, critical economic conversations, and the consistency you have is admirable. And I'm very, very privileged and honored to have, been the keynote person answering questions today on this space. And thank you so much for having me. I wish everyone a lovely week, considering that tomorrow is the 1st of December.
We're in December.
And, compliments of the season in advance. I wish you a wonderful end of the year.
Thank you so much, sir. We do appreciate you coming in and giving us answering those questions for us. Like Kevin said, guys, we're in December. The whole year has come to this. If you're from Nigeria, the whole year has come to December. This is when you count your assets, your liabilities, and ask if you have made it for the whole 11 months. This is where you submit your AGM to your shareholders. So have you made it? Are you still on the process? You have about 2 weeks. The year ends in 2 weeks, right? Because from the 18th, Nigeria shuts down till about the 3rd or the 5th. Yeah. Safe travels to everyone traveling. I'm not sure how we're going to do this December with the insecurity in all across the federation. I'm very happy that the girls in Kebbi were brought back, but I've been hearing reports of more people being taken, being kidnapped. It's very, very sad. There's a guy that sends me, I don't know this guy. He sends me DMs, and he's sending me DMs of what the United States is doing in Nigeria. I've asked him, can I post it? But he sends me some stuff that I don't want to post, and someone asks me, what's your source? And I can't give the source. But they look very, very real. He's telling me that the US is doing overflights over the Borno side. They are taking pictures from Ghana, and that they are so and so. I don't want to say some last thing he said, but it looks like things are happening. And there's some intel sharing. I hope in the end it will bring peace to the country. I think Nigerians have suffered too much. This thing has got to stop. So we just pray for the government. We pray for the government, the states, the local and the federal, that they can come together, leave the politics, and keep Nigerians safe. That's really what we want. It doesn't matter who you support. There's just got to be safety in the country. People are leaving school to go back home. I don't know if you're aware. Many universities have been closed down now. They're asking, especially the north and middle, they're asking them to go away from coastals and go back home. This is not a strike, just close down because of insecurity. We cannot progress as a nation. No way. If our kids are not in school, it's not going to be possible. Loan or no loan, they've closed the schools down, go home because of insecurity. So we've got to fix that. Thank you so much, Kelvin. I appreciate you guys for also listening, and I hope I'll see you guys next week. We'll maybe do we'll do our space again, and then we'll see how next year will come. You guys have a great day. Have a good week. It's going to be a fantastic Monday. Thank you so much. Have a good day, guys, and bye.